Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for agreeing to speak to me. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. And I guess I just want to get to know what's your journey been and, where you're at, where you're looking to go, and just in general, your thoughts on hairstylists who are trying to navigate the industry, as a freelancer. Um, so yeah, let's
All
uh
right,
let's get
let's
into
get
it.
into it, right? Right, okay. So a little bit about me. So I've been in the hair industry, specifically the Afro hair industry, for the last 7.5 years. And I've just predominantly been a hair salon stylist. And I've not had any experience in terms of working mobile as a mobile stylist or freelance stylist. So it's just been predominantly based in a salon in North London, where we specifically just specialize more with Afro hair textured clients and multi-textured hair clients as well. And then in between, we'd get other hair textures, like European clients would come in for like some tracks for weaves, and some of your Asian clients who might come for like a cut or anything, but it was just predominantly more Afro. So that's just been more my experience. And I've been in that position at the salon where I worked. I started as you just work your way up. So I literally started my hair journey and my career at this salon. I did like 2 years training at Hammersmith College, which specifically used to do, as I understand now, they actually don't do this anymore. They used to do Afro hairdressing course, specifically just Afro hairdressing level 2 and level 3. And that is what I did when I did my training with them. And that was 2008, 2010. And I believe probably maybe like 3 or so years later, they actually cut that. And if they're still doing a hairdressing course, I think it's just predominantly just a basic hairdressing course, and then they'll have some units where you might cover some Afro hair units as well. So gosh, I always struggle to figure out where do I start with this topic on my experience, my journey. But but in terms of working in the industry itself, it wasn't really easy to find the job itself, because I actually lived in Kent when I started my training. When I did my hairdressing training, I lived in Kent. And 2 years later, after I finished my college training, which was 2010, and then 2012, that's when I thought, okay, let me just pursue this hairdressing career and see how it goes, because I didn't want to do nursing. My mom was like, go and do nursing. I was like, no, I don't want to be a nurse. So living in Kent, there wasn't really any really reputable black hair salons that I wanted to work for, and majority were mostly European salons as well. And the clientele, you wouldn't get a lot of, as much as you might have quite a few black people were living in Kent at that time, because when we actually moved to Kent where I lived, there wasn't really a lot of black people in that area at that time. But by the time 2012 came, there was still quite a lot, but there just wasn't really any hair salons. So I knew that I would have to look in London and travel further than where I lived to actually find a salon that I could work for. So it took maybe a good 3 months, going to job interviews, being told, no, you don't have enough qualification on the shop floor, because most of the time people want you to have at least 2 years experience on the shop floor. But my thing is, well, if no one is giving me the opportunity, how am I going to get this 2 years experience on the shop floor? But I eventually found the job at Afro Therapy Salon, where I stayed for the last 7.5 years and worked my way up from a salon assistant to senior stylist to assistant manager as well, and part of the creative team that kind of came along with doing competition work and photographic work as well. I did a little bit of that with them, because I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a professional hairdresser or anything like that. So, and I don't think I had that drive, that passion to visualize what my future would be like in the industry. I just knew that I just needed a hairdressing job, because I did not want to go and work in a hospital. And I got the job, and I think it took about two or 3 months of working at the salon for me to actually realize that I had an actual passion for hairdressing. And I think it came from being my creative director of the salon. She introduced me to the Afro Hair and Live show. They had a competition that they were doing for like avant-garde, like fantasy hair. And she was like, well, why don't you enter into that? Because we had done a training session, and I'd put on the mood board that I created that I want to do some creative work and stuff like that. So that's kind of like how I then realized I actually enjoy hairdressing because of the creative side of hairdressing. It's only through the competition that I did for the Afro Hair and Live show, that's how I kind of I grew my love of hairdressing from that direction. And then doing clients as well came, I think was more a confidence issue, because I wasn't confident in hairdressing starting out. And I was always nervous, and clients, I always used to be so scared of clients because, you know, you want to do everyone's hair perfectly nice and you don't want anyone to be upset once you've done their hair. So I think growing that confidence allowed me to start actually love doing clients' hair. So that kind of took maybe like 6 months into starting the job as a salon junior to be able to really get into that. But more the creative stuff kind of sealed the deal, and that's how I kind of stayed in the industry. And then it kind of just progressed from there. I got more opportunity to do competitions. I did competitions for I think for like 4 years straight since starting with the salon. So so doing the competitions and then photographic work, there was a lot more going on, and, you know, winning the awards as well, that kind of sealed the deal and helped as well. So
I wanted to ask you about this because yes, you're an award-winning hairstylist, you know, just saying. But how did that come about? What was the situation, and what was the award for?
Okay, so the first one was, like I mentioned, the Afro Hair and Live show. So they do that every year in May, and that's hosted by Black Hair and Beauty magazine. And so I entered that one, and then that was the first time I entered the competition, and that was the first award that I ever won for avant-garde styling. And then the same year, because they do the Afro Hair and Live in May, and then you've got the biggest awards they do for the Afro industry is the Black Hair Awards, and that was going to be at the end of the year in December. So Harriet, who's the creative director of Afro Therapy Salon, we decided that why don't we create a collection, because the 2 pieces that I had created for the avant-garde piece were really, really good. So we thought, let's create a full collection. You needed like 4 images for the competition for the Black Hair Awards. So I created 2 more pieces. Actually, I created 6 and we shot those, but we chose 4 that we wanted to showcase for the competition. And then we entered that. So I then won that one as well for the Black Hair Awards. So that was 2013. And then for the next 4 years after that, I would enter the Afro Hair and Live show and the Black Hair Awards as well, because those are the only competitions that are available for the Afro hair industry. Anyway, there's no other competitions out there. So I did that for a while, and that was fun. And it was exciting to be able to be a part of the industry in that way as well, because it kind of takes you out from this day-to-day salon work, and it gives you a focus on a creative direction. It's a slightly different, because this one you've got more control. You choose what you want to do, because you're not going to have a client walk in and be like, you know, Michelle, do this avant-garde hairstyle for me, because you know I've got work on Monday.
Yeah, looking at my shopping list.
So yeah, so that's how we kind of got into that. So yeah,
amazing. So obviously avant-garde looks are more towards the fashion side than, say, TV and film, but of course there is a space and there is a place for avant-garde even in film, depending on you know, the looks that they're going for. How much of it have you translated into sort of working with academic, like academies and educational bodies within, say, with more of a TV and film focus?
In 2018, because I'd done with the photographic work, the competitions that we've done, it's always put in like the Black Hair magazines, and it's online everywhere as well. So I had a lecturer from Arts Bournemouth University. She sent me an email, and she was asking, and she had seen the work that I had done, like specifically the avant-garde work that I had done. And she was asking if I was available to come and do like a specific Afro styling for avant-garde work for her students who were second-year students doing makeup and hair and prosthetics for TV, film and media. So that's kind of like how I first got introduced into that. It wasn't something that I went out looking for. So she reached out to me, and I thought, oh, this is exciting. This is something different, different platform of teaching. So I went out and I did like a session with them. It was like a whole day session. So I had like 28 students in the morning and then 28 in the afternoon, and we're covering more some technical styling methods that you can use when you're working with Afro hair, because with Afro hair we don't have hair long down all the way to our back or something, so you're always having to add extensions to create the looks that you want. So I was training them on how to prepare extensions and different weaving techniques, braiding techniques. But when I got there, I realized that the students had not ever worked with Afro hair. So this was pretty much new for them. And in these classes, so obviously they're predominantly European students. And I think they had maybe, I think there was one Black lady, she was there as well. There was one. And then the model, because they had to look for a model for me while I was traveling, because I live in West London and I was driving down to Bournemouth. So I got them to try and find someone that I could actually do the hair on. So they had a student, she's mixed descent, so she had multi-textured hair, which she had blow dried and straightened for me, ready for what I was going to do with her hair. But during the session, it realized that the student wanted to, as much as it was fun to see the creative styling and the techniques as well that can be used and different things and the accessories and all the other stuff that I planned for the session, it became quite clear that they needed to know more the foundation knowledge, because they had not worked with Afro hair anyway. So they didn't know like how to prepare the hair and products and stuff like that. So most of the questions and everything else that I ended up having to cover with them was more in line with that, and still trying to give them ideas, because they had projects that they were working on for that closing of that term or semester, whatever you call it. So some of them were actually going to be using more like Afro hair models. So they wanted to know like how to work with the hair, preparing the hair and everything else. So
that must have been so challenging for you in such a
yeah, it was challenging, but also because I kind of went prepared with products that I was going to use on this model anyway. So I was able to get them to see how to use the products and to try out. So with them, as much as I could cover with them, I did. And then there were those who were specifically going to do projects and use Afro hair models. So those really had more questions, and I kept in contact with them, and I made myself available so that if anyone's doing a project, they can just send me a message, and which most of them who needed that help did anyway. And I was able to see their progress, give them advice on different synthetic hairs they can use and everything else, and generally how to prepare the hair if they needed to know that as well. So that's how I got introduced to working with specifically hair students who were doing hair and makeup, and that kind of opened my eyes to, okay, this is something that is clearly needed. In the salon itself, we had people who are either actors or singers or performers in some way, who had come to us to do their hair beforehand, because wherever they're going to go and do their work, there wasn't anyone available, or there's the company or the production company would send them to get their hair pre-done, so it can be ready for the filming or whatever the case might be. And every time someone would come in, I would always ask, so they don't have anyone at all? Why don't they just hire someone? Because to me, it just seemed like simple thing. Just hire someone who knows how to do it. But I couldn't. Yeah, so that was always my thing anyway. Anytime an actor came, I was still honored to have someone come and see my chair who's going out and doing like a film or something like that. I've met some interesting people. I met people I thought I'd never met before. And they always seem so nice, because you think, oh, because they're on TV they're gonna act a certain way, but everyone's just normal, so we're all human beings. But yeah, so that's kind of like my experience in terms of meeting people who are in the profession, who are already in the industry and working, and hearing that they're not having someone who's already there available. Because I don't know if it was being ignorant on my part, or I just assumed that, it would make sense they would actually have those people available. But going to the college, to the university and working with them, that kind of made me realize, okay, there's actually a need for this, especially if this is the base area, the foundation part of their learning, and growing into the industry, they start from the learning side of it. So if we're able to implement that from the get-go, as they develop, they have that knowledge anyway, so there wouldn't be any problems moving on as they get into their careers, etc. And then that's when I intentionally started reaching out to some universities, and I was able to work with Birmingham College University twice. So I've worked with them twice since 2018, and last year and this year I've worked with them. And then I reached out to London College of Fashion, so I've worked with them twice as well. So all these places, London College of Fashion, that was a nice place to go. They don't have as many students as you have at Bournemouth University, but they're predominantly European students. And London College had actually had someone come to them before, I think it was a year before, 2 years before, who had done like a mini masterclass with them for Afro hair, because when I went, they had a few little Afro hair products that that could be used. But yeah, so I did. Sorry, go on.
That's okay. I'm just wondering, how long did they offer you for the course? Like, what was the duration that they offered you?
So all these were just 1 day. So they only do, like, you would just go for 1 day. So it's not something that they've actually implemented within the training itself. So we just do like a 1 day masterclass. So it would just be like, if I'm continuing with them, normally I'll just do like, so it's basically going there once a year to do the session with them. And I've had this question quite a few times, asking if I'm going to do some sessions on how to style Afro hair for like period styling. And I'm having to do research for myself to figure out, how did they actually wear their hair back in those days? And, you know, there's a few images, I think more images that you see are the ones that are based more like in the early to late 20s, the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But anything further than that, there's not really a lot. And the ones that you see, they're more like a natural styling, where they had some kind of like a braid done to the hair to just keep the hair more manageable and tame. But I'm trying to work out if I don't think I've seen one where they're kind of more like what you see in like Marie Antoinette type of looks. And I'm like, oh, there were definitely Black people in those times, but obviously during slavery and everything else, they probably weren't at the forefront. They weren't focusing on styling their hair in particular elaborate styles and stuff like that. So absolutely, how do we then create period styling for those eras? I believe I was speaking to another hair makeup artist, and she was telling me that she recommended a few books, and she talked about Pinterest, because she's had to look on Pinterest to find some imagery. And I went on there, but again, there's not really a lot. So it would just be down to more the stylists being more creative minded and trying to figure out ways to, you know, interpret those looks for that time period, and working with the hair that you have. You might have to rely on extensions, because for sure when they do those Elizabethan era type of looks with all that hair, they're definitely using extensions. It's not all the actors' hair. Absolutely. So it's just learning. And on my part, that's something that, because again, that's another challenge for me in terms of creative styling. So I'm having to educate myself in how to do those kind of styling so that I can accommodate for those who want to learn. And also for myself, I want to be able to kind of say, okay, I've styled this and it actually looks like it's from, you know, 18th century or 17th century or something like that. But that's another frustration that I've always had when I look back on history of Black hair. You know, you get the usual big fro from the 70s, and then you try to push a little bit further, and then you start losing. There's not really much to look out for. But if you look at like 14th century, 13th century, it's more the elaborate braiding styles that were specifically for tribals in Africa, relating to their culture, their lineage, and in terms of where they are in the spectrum, whether they're part of the royal family and I find those things more interesting. But when I look at more like 17th, 18th century, I didn't really find much, but it's just a case of just being creative and working out what you can actually create with the Afro hair texture to make it look more for those times. But there's definitely a need, because for some reason, this is a topic that they really focus on when they teach hair and makeup at the colleges and at the universities. It seems they want them to really know how to make wigs and styling for like, those type of eras. But yeah, they need to just figure out how to style it for Afro hair, because we were there in those times as well. We just wasn't at the forefront of things at the time. But it'll be interesting if they did. I don't know if they're planning to do like a movie on Princess Charlotte or the Queen, the Black Queen. If they'll ever do a movie, it'll be interesting to see how they'll portray her hair. But I believe she was mixed descent though. She wasn't like Afro hair textured.
I mean, I don't know, but this is the beautiful thing about the TV and film industry, is that it's about reimagining as much as it is about honoring what was the past. But I think that you can't honor or respect or translate and create beyond what was if you don't know what was and you don't know how.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, I wish, and I really feel like there's so many opportunities to be so wonderfully creative with Afro hair, and it's being avoided right now.
Yeah, I think people just need to embrace it. And I think it's gotten to a point where, because we ourselves, we got to a point where we actually embrace our own hair, because there was a time where we didn't even like our own hair. Fair enough, due to the history of Black slavery and trying to, be part of the community, with certain looks, with how you wear your hair, with where we got to with the relaxers, to the point where we were natural for a while and went back to the relaxers. And I don't think there's any problem with someone wanting to have natural hair or relaxed hair or wearing wigs or whatever. I think it's just the point where you love what you are and what you have, and you embrace it. Because if you yourself, you don't love it, how do you expect others to actually love and appreciate it? So it's kind of like a two-way thing. We've had to grow and start to embrace this hair and say, this is my natural hair, this is Afro hair. It's not hard, it's not difficult to manage to some extent. There is times where it can be. It's not hair that you can just wake up and, you just brush easily and you just style and go. It still requires a bit of work. It requires patience and time. But I think it's gotten to a point where, because we ourselves have started to actually love our own hair and appreciate the natural hair, it then, translate to others of other cultures when they see us embracing and loving our own hair, and starting to change the way that we speak about the hair, the way we address it. Because there was a time where, Afro hair was just seen, even some people now just believe that this hair is hard to manage, it's so tough, it's so X, Y, and Z, and we've not helped that, because we viewed that as well. And to this day, there's some people who just don't like the look of natural hair. They think it looks messy, it doesn't look tidy enough. But that is changing as well. So as those things change within our own community, it would then translate to other communities and appreciating and understanding. And then, because we're being educated about this hair as well ourselves, we then educate other people about this hair as well.
Absolutely.
So I think it kind of works both ways with this.
Definitely. But I definitely think that it goes both ways. But I think a lot of the past is to do with expectation from other people outside the culture of what is appropriate. Like, I think there's been a lot of negative messages around Afro hair being different.
Yeah, for sure.
Either side. I think that built up a lot of a lack of trust.
Yeah.
People don't touch my hair movement and all this stuff, that this whole idea of I don't want you touching my hair has stemmed from, feeling like there hasn't been enough respect towards natural Afro hair history. And because there is a lack of respect, there's a lack of trust that you will treat it with kindness. You will treat it with respect. And then but there's a lot of, you're right, there's a lot of internalization from, slavery and the messages from different cultures, westernized cultures, that have infiltrated a lot of Black communities, I feel, to make them feel like, because also in terms of desirability as women, having a certain look, being able to pull off a more European look was seen to be more desirable. You could be someone, you could feel attractive if you could pull off a good hair look as opposed to a bad hair look. And it's this whole idea of, you know, pitting these two hair textures against each other. It's like, but why? And but you know, every culture has this kind of unfortunate hierarchy when it comes to the look of the person.
For sure.
And I think that, yes, I'm so glad that there has been this embracing of natural hair, whatever it looks like, however it grows out of your head, and saying, you know, how do I work with this? I want to work with this. There will always be that second step of how do we need to build trust between different communities to say, okay, if I have embraced my hair and I'm looking after it and I have its back, I need you to work with that and understand that there are different things that I need so that my hair doesn't get damaged.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so it's a journey for all of us, and individuals, like we mentioned before, we just have to make sure we're ready to provide the information and the education, because we're in a point where a lot of people want to learn and they're actually reaching out that they really want to get this information. So we need to be in a place where, do we have enough people ready to educate people with the correct information in a very professional way, so people can be equipped and ready to actually go out and work with Afro and multi-textured hair. So again, this will be another area that needs to be addressed, because as much as you have colleges that offer hairdressing training, most of them, I would assume, they're not really trained enough in Afro hair to be providing that education. So that's another thing that needs to be addressed. You know, how do we go about making sure that those who are lecturers are ready to then start educating their students about these hair textures? And if it's a case of reaching out to individuals who are able to provide that training for them, then that's something that they will have to do. But it's definitely, there's so much that everyone has a part to play, you know, from the top all the way down. Everyone has a small part to play to ensure that we're able to address everything that needs to be done. At least this is a starting point, that people are having this conversation, and that people are actually starting to do the small courses and the master classes they can do online, or whatever, you know, capacity they're able to do stuff. And I'm very excited that through the sessions that I've been doing, that I've been having people, you know, starting to prepare. I've had people who've got salons and they say, you know what, I did training a while ago. I really want my team to, you know, get trained on Afro hair texture. And, you know, we're making plans as much as I'm able to, you know, making plans so that once that time we're able to actually get together after, you know, some of the lockdown restrictions are kind of cut down, we can actually start to do more, you know, face-to-face. Because I personally prefer to do more face-to-face training, as much as I'm having to learn how to do like online. And it's got its benefits because you can reach so many people in so many different areas, but being able to do more like face-to-face training, because I think more hands-on practical learning is what is actually needed, touching and feeling the hair, seeing how to apply the product, how to handle the heat styling tools with the different hair curl patterns and everything else.
Have you ever, you know, approached these educating bodies and academies and so on, and sort of put to them an idea of more of a full-time course, and this idea that there perhaps needs to be a longer period of time to teach around Afro hair, or do you feel that, you know, one day is enough?
Well, one day is definitely not enough. It's just enough to just about start to thinking about Afro hair, and possibly looking at, you know, what can be done with Afro hair. Or if someone is not really been introduced to it, it's kind of like just like a little introduction. But with what I cover, when I've done, if I'm doing like a specific masterclass, we cover everything from understanding the curl types, the hair types. I'll cover a little bit about products and tools, and then we'll just do like a demo with a model or two models. And I always try to get the students to really be involved, because sometimes they're a bit nervous about working with the hair. They're not sure how to touch the hair or how to approach the hair. So it's just getting them to kind of be more comfortable with it and confident with it. And by the time we finish the session, they're very much excited. And if it was a case of where it's done for maybe like a week, at least that's something. Today, I am officially self-employed. because I started my educating company late last year, and they officially launched from 2020 this year. So this year was going to be the last year where I'm working in the salon as a full-time hairstylist and focus more on education. So that's the transition I've made. So with the time that I have now and the freedom to do much more than I'm able to do if I was still based in the salon, it will definitely be a conversation I'll be having with those who offer training and education within this spectrum, to talk about doing more longer courses that are not just for one day, because one day is never enough really to cover or for someone to really learn what they need to do, because you need a lot of practical experience, a lot of practical learning is involved, and having day-to-day access to the hair and learning more, and having someone who's there to teach it anyway more frequently just than just the one day is what is going to be needed. So so this kind of transitioned into the long-term plan of what I want to do within the industry itself, because to be fair, my focus wasn't necessarily, when I started thinking about the company, when I actually did the blueprint of what my education company would be, it wasn't focused on working with people within the industry who are working in film and TV. Sure. It's just become a small part of it. But my biggest frustration was within the Afro hair industry itself. I've had this massive frustration with the Afro hair industry as to, we don't have enough education available for our stylists and for any students who actually want to study Afro hairdressing. And there's not much places where people can go and see like workshops and seminars where they can go. Even if you're just going to like an evening workshop or a seminar, there's not really that much stuff available for the Afro industry. So my passion and love for transitioning into education is because of the frustration I have with the Afro industry, and the potential that I see is possible for our industry to get to a much more higher professional level when it comes to the education that we can provide and making things more available for stylists. Because we've seen a lot of young people coming where I've worked, where we've employed them. I think their mindset, I don't know what their mindset clearly is of understanding what it requires to be a hairdresser and being a part of this industry. So I think there's a way of training that's needed where you can implement everything to do with hair and not only just focus on the theory side, but getting to experience. We need the full experience so that you're kind of educated in where you can go once you finish your education, what steps you can take to get to the next level. Because some people come and think, oh, I want to be a hairdresser and then I want to be a celebrity hairdresser. You know, I'm like, okay, so what do you have any knowledge of how you can get yourself to that stage? Because it's not all these celebrity hairdressers that you see. They didn't just finish college and work in a salon for like 2 months and then all of a sudden you became a celebrity hairdresser. There's a work to be done. Yeah. But so that's kind of like how my love of wanting to be in the education side kind of began. And then looking at Africa, because I'm from Zimbabwe and I've got this deep desire to do some training and hairdressing education in Africa as well. So all these things kind of played a part in where I'm at now. But it's been amazing that this kind of door opened in terms of working with people who are in the film and TV industry, because I love avant-garde work, I love creative work, and it'll be fun to be involved in that, but definitely to start to see that change happen where people are more educated regardless of what race or color you are, where we're able to be more stylists who are able to understand all the different hair types that are out there. And then you can then specialize in some areas if you want to do that, but at least you have some knowledge on how to work with these other hair types as well. Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's that's kind of like what my company is kind of focusing on, and how this came about with the training that I'm doing now, especially with what I've been doing on Instagram. I actually just wanted to do, because I felt like, this lockdown, I've been sitting at home, I need to be more productive with myself. I can't just be chilling here and enjoying this time off. I need to do something. And because I I was thinking, oh, I want to do some teaching. I need to do something. So, you know, why don't I just do like a mini masterclass on Instagram or something? And the response that I've had since doing these sessions, I wasn't actually expecting it. I thought I would probably have like 50 students who would just watch, and you know, that'll be all. But it seems everyone started sharing, and that's how I ended up having so many different people within the film and TV and media industry, specifically hair and makeup artists, watching these master classes, and they learn so much from it, and they realize this is something that some of them have been looking for, this type of education. For some this was new, for some they probably had learned a little bit of Afro like back in the day, so it was kind of like a refresher for them. And it kind of just grew from there, and I just decided to just continue doing small little sessions, and I like giving people information anyway, so if anyone wants to listen to it, you know, it's a good thing. So that's kind of like how I started with the Instagram. And then I had other people who are lecturers at academies kind of reaching out. For example, like Delama, they reached me from seeing one of my master classes. I think one of their lecturers saw the master classes, and then she passed on the information, and then they reached out to me, and that's how I ended up doing like a session with them actually last week, the 22nd. Yeah.
In general, because you've had quite a lot of experience as an educator, and doing very short, snappy, either refresher or completely from scratch introduction to Afro hair. What has been the response from students? What has been the feedback that you've got, the most common feedback when it comes to what students have felt in terms of learning about Afro hair? How have they responded?
I think for most who've responded, especially those who are already working in the industry, they've had to try and work with Afro hair textures, but with very limited understanding or knowledge on how to work with these hair textures. So by watching these classes, the mini masterclass series that I did, they've gained so much more knowledge than what they had, and even for some than what they had actually, either where they might have gone to like try and do some kind of mini course before. But they feel, most are saying that this is information they've needed for a long time, and they're so much appreciative that they're actually starting to get the information that they need to know, and it's much more clearer, and they're able to understand, because I try to break it down as much as possible so everyone can understand. But predominantly it's all been positive feedback. Everyone is just hungry for the knowledge. They're literally hungry to know more and to learn more, and they want to learn more. And they realize that, I mean, for some, it's not like, I don't even know how to put it, because sometimes I think, you know, we've been around for a long time. We've been around forever. We've had these hair textures. It's not anything new. And I don't know if it's ignorance on some part, or it's a case of people have not really had the time to sit down and really consider how the other half feels and how their experience have been, to the point where now they realize, okay, we need to actually do something. We need to train our teams to be able to work with these hair textures. We need to have the basic knowledge of just how to handle the hair and the products to use as well. So for many, this has been an eye-opener for some, and they're realizing that they need to actually equip themselves and really learn. For some, they've probably thought about it once in a while, and they hadn't been able to do much, or they hadn't done much, but now they really put in that effort to actually learn about these hair textures and how to work with these hair types. And for those who are lecturers, the ones I've spoken to, they've actually, I was speaking to one, and she was a lecturer in a college, and she said there was a time where they were actually told not to focus too much on any of the Afro hair units, and just teach the students the European hair textures as well. And
did she give you the reason why that was?
I can't remember a specific reason. She said, yeah, they were just told not to focus so much on the Afro hair texture unit, like kind of cover it up completely, and just, yeah. So again, for some, it's just been a case of where they've wanted to start to educate. So I've spoken to other people who are educators, and they've wanted to actually start to introduce Afro hair in their syllabuses, in their training sessions. But it's just, I think it's kind of like, it's not something that they themselves can just choose to do. It has to be a process, and I think the people higher up, or whoever is putting these syllabuses for training together, they're in control of what is actually provided in terms of the education for their students as well.
Absolutely. I'm really curious then, what percentage would you say of your classes are made up of lecturers, are made up of the teachers of hairstyling work, comparative to, say, students who are just wanting to gain the knowledge so that they can get into positions, either in an educational side or say, being a professional in the film and TV industry, or just in salons? Like, what percentage of your classes generally tend to be made up of the actual teachers themselves?
I think I would start with what I've done now. I would say it's still a very small percentage, I would say, because predominantly most of them, they're either just hair and makeup artists who are either freelance and they want to learn for themselves. And I would say it's probably like 5%, I would say. It's very low. So it's not that many that I've spoken to. Unless there've been some who are attending, but they've not made me aware that they're actually educators and reached out to me and spoken to me per se. But the ones that I've spoken to is definitely a handful, I would say, that I've spoken to. And the majority is just those who are either hair and makeup artists and they're freelancers, or they work for productions companies, or some are working in theater, and they've told me their experience. You know, they've been working in theater for X amount of years, and they've had to try and work with Afro hair texture. Some are learning on the job as they go, and just doing the best they can, it seems. Yeah, so.
The majority of people, if I'm really honest with you, I think that from what I know and what I've heard from other hairstylists in the industry, the vast majority, because there isn't this academic injection of theoretical and practical knowledge that's given in schools, in training facilities, in training institutions around Afro hair. Yeah, the vast majority of those who go into the industry are just literally learning on the job, and they're expected to sink or swim. And then whether you do or not, it doesn't get checked, it doesn't get really verified, looked at, it doesn't get there's no questions being asked, and the best, some I think ultimately are just that is their journey in their careers in the industry. And there are some who take responsibility, and they will train themselves, and they will do your classes, they will for them. And they are, of course, everyone I feel who's freelancer in a creative field understands the necessity of skilling up and keeping your skills fresh, and keep training and keep learning and keep growing and on all of that good stuff. I do still feel like, because the knowledge gap is still quite large, it feels there aren't enough hairstylists, professionals in the industry working currently with Afro hair who have the training necessary. They've maybe done a course here, like a one-day course here and a one-day course there, maybe every other year, or if and maybe not that, and then they're struggling in the physical scenarios where they're placed with someone like myself in the chair, and they're expected to do it. But there is it's a cocktail of issues, because you have actors like myself who ultimately have to come as ready as possible, because you're supporting the lack of knowledge for a lot of hairstylists. And then, it's not the time or the place to be having the conversation with a hairstylist to sort of say, maybe would it have been better if perhaps you knew how to do this, instead of relying upon me? Because I'll be really frank with you, like, I am not an expert hairstylist in any way, shape,
Mm.
or form. I can do my hair just about on a good
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
You know, but then when you have the pressure of doing your job, which, you know, for me, it's the acting. It's all about the work.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, it's about making the characters, but there are teams of people who help to
Yes.
create the look
Yeah.
of a character. And I am not the expert when it comes to necessarily the precise hair and makeup look for my character.
Mm.
I would not pretend to have the same level of skill.
Mm.
And so
Yeah.
when I'm faced with a situation where I'm sort of like, I need your help, but I can't do that, and I can't do this for you. I ultimately am the one who has to go on screen, looking however I end up looking. And the message that's sort of returned to me is, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like the message to a lot of Afro-haired artists is, yeah, that'll do. We don't know any better. That'll be fine.
Mm.
But
Mm.
you know, audiences can tell the difference
Yeah.
between
For
a
sure.
really
Yeah.
well-styled, you know, beautifully finished, you know, Afro hairstyle or makeup.
Mm.
And like you can with Caucasian looks, makeup and hair, you can
Yeah.
tell instantly if someone who did it knew what they were doing.
Mm. For
And,
sure. Yeah.
and I don't think there's a lot of awareness for audiences or anyone really in the industry just how often, how prevalent it is that you have hairstylists on the job, professionals on film and TV sets and theatre sets who are actually the ones who have created the styles that you see.
Mm.
Oftentimes, I think you're right. I think the vast majority of the time, when in the UK, when an
Yeah.
actor or actress looks ready, it's because they've gone to a hair salon, you know, a
Mm.
hairdresser
Yeah.
externally, and had their hair done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's such a shame that it has to be that way, and it shouldn't be. And obviously now, I believe in this season that we're in, people are actually going to make the effort to ensure that if they're going to be called a professional hairstylist, a makeup artist on a production, they should be able to do all their actresses' hair, regardless of whether it's European or Afro hair. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, it's always been something that has shocked me, where I'll have someone who's in the industry come and mention to me, well, they need to get their hair done here because there's no one available to do their hair. I appreciate some of the hair takes a while, but either way, they just have to get the person who knows how to work with that hair to do the hair that they need, so the actor doesn't feel yeah, because you never want to be put in a position where you feel like you don't matter enough. You know, whatever happens to your hair, we can work with whatever we manage to do, just deal with it. And I think at that point, you're not feeling, I don't know, as because I'm not an actress or actor, but if my hair is not looking a particular way, it has an effect on you emotionally anyway. And I'm not even standing in front of a camera, you know, being seen by the rest of the world. You definitely want to be in a position where you're happy with how everything has been put together from the top down, and you don't want to go on stage feeling you know, they don't really care, because that's pretty much be the message that's being sent out to you guys, that, well, this is what we've got, so we
I
just
think
have to do what there is.
this is it. I think it's just, you just feel forgotten is what I keep
Yeah.
saying, that you just feel
Yeah.
forgotten. And I think sometimes it's not intentional, but when you're
Mm.
asked to sometimes pay for those looks and you're not being
Mm.
first, again, you kind of feel like you're just being neglected in a way.
Mm. Mm.
Because you're aware that other co-stars, you know, other people that you're working with in cast haven't had to do that, haven't needed to do
Yeah.
that, haven't been lumped
Yeah.
the bill, and you're sort of like, okay, so
Yeah.
that's now my problem. and
Yeah.
and you're like, but why is it my problem? Like, I don't want to be
Mm.
unprofessional, but is it really my problem that you can't do this, or that this is not in?
Mm.
Because I'm sort of like, what is the point of me going through hair
Yeah. Yeah.
department if I'm going to have to do it myself? And so it does become it becomes frustrating.
Mm.
There have been times where I've, you know, been very affected by the fact that I don't feel like a particular department understands
Mm.
my needs, can cater to my needs. I don't feel
Mm.
like they are are able to support me in a way that they are there to support me. And it's also it's a very frustrating distraction to have when you want to fully just be like, I just want to be in my character, I just want to be in this present moment, doing what I'm here to do. I might want to go look through my lines, perhaps, you know, I just want to not have to worry about this stuff, so I can just do my job to the best of my ability. But it's this kind of, it's the element of teamwork that I feel like is just often missed, forgotten, and on top of it, you're sort of made to feel, well, you know, you're not that important. So, and it's I think it definitely needs to change. But you know, we're at this point now, and it's quite exciting because this is just before we've just closed. I'm doing a hair campaign with Equity at the moment.
Okay.
They're surveying actors and actresses of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic background here in the UK who are performers. They've sent a survey out which ran for about a month and a bit, asking them questions. What have been your experiences on professional jobs when it comes to hair and makeup? What was the truth? And so now we're in this stage where we are now collating and analysing and looking at the data and seeing how many people have stories like myself. You know, what are the messages? And I think it will be very interesting to see.
And to hear others' experiences.
Absolutely. You know, I might be crazy, you might be crazy. Maybe we're just imagining
it. It's true. We could just be the only ones in the world, but
I will take that. I will hold my hand. Okay, I'm crazy, and I got it wrong, and I've misread the look of it. I've misread, or I've exaggerated how big this is as an issue. But I'm very interested to see just how big an issue this is, because I think that it's very hard to wiggle out of accountability or to say this isn't a big problem. Even though we are just talking about hair, we are literally talking about something that a lot of people would say it's almost a luxury. It's the aesthetics. It's just the cherry on the top of everything else that goes on behind the scenes to create films. And yes, I agree. I think there's a certain element of this which is like, this should not be as big an issue as it is. But
it shouldn't be at all. No, it shouldn't be.
This is the problem with this not being thought of. You know, something that should be obvious, like it's literally sitting on my head. You know, if this is something that's being missed, then the question I feel becomes, well, what else is being missed? And I think that's a wider problem with this when it comes to our diversity issue.
Yeah, I think definitely the diversity issue is kind of very broad, and it's not, I think it's just in every job aspect, I believe there is this problem anyway. And I think the thing now is to also ask, it's even to ask, is it a case of we're not having maybe enough Black people who are interested in working in film and TV, or they're not presented with the opportunity? Because there's so many different things we need to look at. It's not only just, we need to introduce the education side of, for those who are already in the industry, it's very much key from foundation. I think every academy that offers hair and makeup for TV, or even if it's just a hairdressing course, they should be covering this from the foundation. It's not something that should be set aside and then put as a optional unit for someone to choose whether they want to do it, or they'll do like it's a specialist unit and set it aside on its own. It's still hair. We just have to cover everything. Just as when I did my training, when I had to learn about cutting and color, I had to practice on like a European hair block. That's what was used for the training. So I think the training has to be covered from the foundation level. And also, if it's a case of why isn't there more maybe Black hairstylists employed within production companies? Is that still something that needs to be discussed as well? Because there's so many people who do Afro hairdressing available because there's so many salons? Is it something maybe we need to figure out why maybe people are not applying for those job roles? Is there a problem in that area as well? So I think it's a lot that we have to take into account, but I think definitely we're in that season where individuals, they're taking account and they're deciding that, okay, we need to learn more about this thing, because this is a conversation that has needed to be had like a very long time ago. As much as I specialize in Afro multi-textured hair, if someone with European hair sits in my chair, I'm confident and comfortable to actually do their hair. If someone who is Asian sits in my chair, I've had to teach myself how to cut that hair, because some of that hair texture is very thick. It cannot be cut the same way I would cut someone with European hair or Afro hair. So I'm having to do that learning for myself, because I believe when someone walks in the salon and they've got that hair, I'm confident to say, okay, you can sit down and I'll cut your hair for you. I might not be the best in the world, but at least I know enough that I'm able to confidently do something for someone's hair without them feeling uncomfortable, without them walking out crying or something.
I want to ask one more question, and
Sure.
you're the only person I've, as of yet, been able to ask this question to.
Okay.
Given the nature of an avant-garde look, you know, these are very elaborate looks. These are very intense, and I am sure labor-intensive looks. In terms of the time it takes to construct a look like that, how much time do you think it would take to create an avant-garde look, which would be ready within the confines of, say, a schedule for filming, like in the confines of a day, one day? How long would you need to create that so that someone could literally step out and then be retouched up throughout the day for different scenes? How long would you say that would take to create?
I mean, it's difficult to answer, but not at the same time, because with the way that I work, if I have because I'm understanding that if you know what you're filming and what you're meant to be creating, you have the blueprint of the idea of the piece that you need to make. So there's some certain avant-garde pieces that you can create within an hour to 2 hours, depending on how extravagant it needs to be. And then there's those pieces that are going to be more like pieces that you create on the side, and then they are attached to the model, including with their hair. So something like that, it might be a piece that you've worked on maybe a course of a week to 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because if you're doing like for a film, you'll be given time, and especially if it's going to be very extravagant pieces and you need to make a lot of them. I'm hoping, because I've not as yet had that experience to work in that capacity, but I'm just basing this on my experience of preparing for like competition work and photo shoots. So most of that work that I've done, some I've done like in a day, where I'm working conservatively for like maybe 5 hours to 12 hours, depending on how much detail I'm putting into the work. And then there's some pieces where I've done a piece which has taken me like 3 days to construct and do, but at the last minute I decided I didn't like it, I take it apart, and I literally have to try and do it within like 3 hours, because at this point I'm working under pressure. So I can give an example and say maybe we're doing like say for example, because everyone knows Black Panther, the movie, and you had to create like a big updo avant-garde braid work. So some of that piece you might create it beforehand. So it might take maybe like a day to do some kind of braid work. And then to attach it onto the model, you might need maybe 2 hours to do the attaching, and then to add any extra braiding that you might include with their own hair. So I would say about 2 hours, that would work fine. And then, so that's kind of like the time frame I can give. It depends. The bigger the piece, the more time you're going to need. But if you go on my Instagram, there's a piece that I last did for like a charity event that was asked to do like a creative avant-garde work. It was just like a braid on a dolly head, and it looks like a bow tie with kind of like some traditional African tone sort of colors. So I did that within like 2.5 hours, because so I was doing more like braid work. So because I'm so used to doing a lot of braid work, and I got to a place where I knew that I wasn't going to have the opportunity, because my frustration also was every time I looked at inspirational work, it was predominantly done by a European hairstylist who had used a European hair model, and she got long hair and they probably use some extension, but the hair was always long that they're working with. And I was like, okay, so I cannot afford to buy this human hair all the time, and I don't have models who've got long hair. So what can I do? So I've managed to teach myself how to work with a lot of synthetic hair, like the expression hair, and be able to create really, really good, nice avant-garde pieces. So I've had to adjust how to work with that, and also learn how to make wigs with that hair, so I can create some of the avant-garde wigs that I've had to make as well, and then be able to attach them to the model and incorporate their own hair to see how it kind of blends and works together. But most of the time when I do most pieces, they have to be done separate. It's only a few where I've had to do a model's hair on the day. Actually, we try and avoid that, because when we've done photo shoots, they take so long, the whole day. So just prepping all the models, because normally we'll have like 6 or 8 models, and I can't stand there and do like avant-garde work on the day. So most of the work is I make sure that I'm able to attach it and put it on the model within at least 45 minutes to an hour.
That's amazing. That's so interesting, because you're essentially saying that yes, it has to be. These time pressures are, of course, something you have to work with, even in a fashion situation for a photo shoot. And there's a necessity on time and making sure that you can have as good in as short amount of time as possible. And that there are ways around that. So even if you're talking over the top avant-garde looks that are not your everyday look for Afro hair, there are ways and things that have already been established that are entirely feasible within a 45 to 2 hour window.
It's just planning and preparing in advance. I think once you know what you're meant to be doing, if you're working on a production, once you have the direction, you organize and you plan yourself. And you definitely want to, because I always have to meet models that I'm going to work with, whether it's a month before. Once I know what we're doing, when we've organized for photo shoots, we do like a casting at least a month or 2 months beforehand, especially if the work is going to be long. And then in between that, I might have sessions where I meet up with them and we try on the pieces and make adjustments, so that you don't just make something and you hope that when you bring it on the day, it will fit. You don't want that problem. You don't want that.
Oh my God. No, that's so good. Thank you, Michelle. I think that's all my questions for you. Thank you so much for being such a sport and answering all these questions, and just being I've learned so much right now, like just off the back of what you said. So yeah, thank you so much for taking the time.
No, it's been interesting having this conversation, and it's nice that we're opening up these topics and just making everyone aware. And I think it's not, like you mentioned earlier, it's not about blaming or pointing fingers or judging anyone. It's just about making people more aware, because once you're aware of something, then you can choose to change it, or you can choose to ignore it and just continue as you are. So even for myself, as much as I'm going into education and I'm teaching, I'm probably going to be learning and gaining new experiences as well. So I think this is a really, really good time for everyone to just start embracing each other and change, and pretty much understanding that we all have different things and we all have different experiences. But at the end of the day, if we're all in a position where we know how each race feels, or we're able to cater for each other the best way that we can, I think it's a good point of moving forward, especially with things are changing all the time, and with this lockdown and all this stuff. I think the lockdown period, it's almost like been a blessing in some sense, where people have had time to really think and readjust. They're starting to become more self-aware and getting that time to kind of shut down from your day-to-day, everyday, going to work, coming home life, and learning more about other people, or just learning in general. Because I know for sure I've really appreciated this time.